what's going on YouTube? This is Barrett with Espresso Outlet. And I've had a lot of people say I don't get out the M6 enough. So, as I've been learning to roast, I've been using the M2 quite a bit. It maxes out at about 400 grams. This one goes up to 700 grams, so almost twice the capacity. I've been enjoying the smaller one just to learn some of my profiles, but this big one really can crank out a lot of beans. So the other night I did a little roast off with the M6, the Bullet, and a Cormorant, which is a gas roaster, not electric. But it was really interesting to see the differences between that. I'm actually working on a video. It's going to take a while to edit. I need to do a little follow-up with the guys. One of the guys had to leave a little bit early. But today we're going to roast on this M6. I have 500 grams of this Brazil Mata de Minas from Good Brothers. He sells green beans as well. So if you didn't know that he sold green and you're getting into roasting, he's a really good resource for getting green beans. So thanks for sending those over. We have this preheated. Today I need to reset Artisan. I already did a roast and I haven't reset it yet. I usually set my set value on this M6 to about 171. I was looking in the Scott Rao book the other day, and it was talking about different charge temperatures. So about 500 grams, he recommends about 170, 175 degrees C. And when I was doing 180 on this, like I do on the M2, is this too much? So it was putting too much heat in the beans. It's very quick. And now I've kind of like learned if I do about 170 on this, it's much more controllable. At least with the 500 grams. If we were going to put more, I'd say the 175, 180 is probably going to be more where you're wanting to be at. But just kind of giving you a little bit of background. So this is the M6 today. I need to do, I'm going to work on a video here soon about the Artisan portion of this, because it's really not that difficult, but it did take a little bit of time to get used to, I thought. So still learning it, still not just the master roaster by any means, but been having a lot of fun. It's been getting lots of great roasts out of this. We've given away a lot of beans. I know people keep asking. I really don't have many to give out. I'll give a shout out if there's any available. But yeah, let's get this going. It's at about 170, so it's going to be pretty good. The environmental temp, I've heard it called two different ways, ET, environmental temp or exhaust temps. People seem to use it interchangeably. It is about 160, and the bean temp, which is our main chamber, is about 170. So that's about perfect to get going on this. We'll set the drum at 100, and we're just going to go through the paces. I have it's a Brazil background loaded and Artisan right now, and it's really been nice. It's one that someone has put together. You can use your Artisan designer and make your own curve. So it's been really cool. I've actually tweaked it a little bit, but I found like it was a really good starting point. So if you want this curve, you can actually find it on the KaleidoRoasters.com website, and it's under the Getting Started tab. We have lots of just download links. So we have like our degree C to F conversion chart. We have a couple of these background files. If you have any files that work really good for you, make sure to share some beans. I want to start putting together maybe like a zip file that you can download that has pictures of the beans before and after, and maybe like a PDF of the background as well as the background itself, so that other people can start utilizing some of these backgrounds, because a lot of people get these and they just kind of aren't sure where to start. So having one of those good backgrounds has been extremely helpful for me. I have about a half dozen. This is the one that I seem to keep coming back to. It works really well. I've done some lighter roasts. There's some Ethiopian beans. They can take quite a bit of heat, where beans like this, they're pretty forgiving, but if I don't watch it, I'm gonna burn it at the end, and you can burn all of them at the end. So let's get this set up and do a quick video. All right, so we have our roaster preheated. We have the M6 and about 500 grams of this Good Brothers Brazil Mata de Minas. And I'm gonna load them in the top. I will note, make sure that you have your little bean door shut, because you don't want them going right in right away. And also, make sure if you've had this open to cool, that you close it. Believe it or not, you'll probably forget at some point. I have my set value set at 171 degrees. Since it's 500 grams of green, I found that on this M6, 171 is pretty good. The heater is on 100 for right now. We have the damper, which is your exhaust fan, on 30, and the drum on 100. So we're gonna start by just dropping these beans. But before, I wanna hit the start button. The start button is gonna start trending this graph. We're gonna drop them. And pretty much all the beans go in every time. There's always like a straggler. So I like to give them a little push with my finger before I shut the door. And then we're gonna hit the charge button. And that bean temp indicator, it's actually in the beans now. So the beans are much cooler than the ambient temperature inside the drum. So those beans are beginning to absorb a lot of this heat right now. Our delta BT is going to be pretty low in the beginning, sometimes known as your ROR, or rate of rise. So we're just trying to get as much heat into these beans as we can right now. So I like to do, I've been saying a little bit less, but I like to do probably 3 minutes on the drying time. I'm going to back the heat off a little bit. We hit our turning point pretty much right where we wanted to. It's hard to tell. Even though the graphs look a little bit offset, this graph is actually set to drop at like 30 seconds in. So you'd hit start and you'd wait about 30 seconds. We're actually going to probably up the damper just a little bit. And our ROR, or delta BT, is about 25 right now, which is pretty high. So I want to back that way off. Maybe even 40. So ideally, I want to hit about the 10-minute mark on this roast. And I want them to drop at about 205 degrees Celsius. So to explain some of the stuff in Artisan, you have an approximate time to dry the beans remaining. Eventually you're going to have a time till first crack. At one point you have your ET. Some people call it environmental temp, other people call it the exhaust temp. It's kind of just the temperature inside the roaster itself. Then you have your BT, which is your bean temp. There's a probe in the front that looks at the temperature of the beans running through it. And then you have your delta BT, which is the change in bean temp per minute. So right now it's at 18, which is pretty high. So what does that mean? About every minute it's going to go by 18 degrees Celsius. Let's back off the heat just a little bit more. Typically I do 13 to 15 in the beginning, and towards the end I like to see it taper off to 5 or so. You got to be careful. I stalled a roast the other day. It'll get over here and you'll stall it, and it's just, you about can't recover. You've ruined the beans at that point. You have your values for your heater, because once you hit the button, you can't really see. Like if I was to hit a different button on the damper, you might not know which was the last button you hit on your heater. So you can look over here. It has your heater, which right now is at 30. The fan is at 100. It has the ambient temperature, which is like your outside temperature. It's pretty cold today. It's freezing. And then you also have sliders off to the side. So if you wanted to make a very aggressive change, you can hit the slider. Someone's made some pretty nice buttons at the bottom. They're all a little bit different on the Kaleido. I need to work on making them more universal, because in my opinion, it's a little bit annoying to go from one roaster to the other. And the buttons, they're all pretty much there, but they are laid out a little bit different. On the graph, you have the green portion, which I consider the drying phase. I'm going to click dry in. We're at about 4 minutes. And when you click the dry end, it's going to start a timer for when the first crack is going to start. So it's saying in about 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, we're going to hit first crack. And it's kind of falling because our heat is dropping. I'll probably hit it with some heat. We're trying to follow this blue line and then the lighter kind of grayed out blue line behind it. So it's not necessarily the easiest setup, but it takes a little bit of getting used to. But once you get used to it, I have found it not to be that difficult. But with these roasters, you have a lot going on when you first get it. So if you got any questions, we have videos out there you can reach out, or even before you buy one, make sure you kind of understand maybe what you're getting into and the different capacities and capabilities of each. Get something that suits your comfort zone. So right now, we're definitely in this mallarding phase. It's saying first crack is maybe 3 minutes out. I bet it kind of hits sooner. This is a graph for some different beans, and I've been hitting first crack a little bit early on this, and maybe I need to turn back the heat some, because I am trying to follow this graph. But once you get out of the green phase is pretty much your drying phase. The yellow phase is your yellowing or mallarding phase. And then this kind of red-brown at the top is where you're actually getting your nice dark roast. So you probably don't need to check the tryer that much. I like to take a look, especially when I'm getting going and just getting used to the machine and used to the beans. At about this point, you can hear some very light pops. It's not really first crack. It's just a little bit of the moisture. We will start to hear first crack, but it is going to be a lot louder. Hopefully you can hear it pretty good. We're following this line really nicely. So I heard that was the first pop. As I mentioned, a bit early. It says that we're probably going to hit the actual first crack in about 50 seconds. A single pop, that's not really first crack. You want it to be kind of a rolling, like, think of it like you make a bag of popcorn in your microwave and you hear the first few pops, and then all of a sudden it's popping multiple pops at the same time. That's really what we're looking for marking the first crack. And why we want to hit these buttons at the bottom for the charge and the drying and the first crack is it puts markers on your graph, but it also starts to do some of the calculations at the top based off of this graph. It's going to anticipate, like it says right now, that first crack is about 20 seconds out. So that can be extremely useful if you're trying to speed up or slow down the roast. Usually you don't want to get real aggressive with things, but it can help. So I'm going to say first crack starts right now, and then you can see that the percent development shows up at this point. And I'm probably going to back off the heat because this roast is going a bit too fast for me. Been talking. So the bean temp about 196. We're going to up the damper quite a bit. Get some of the smoke out of the roast chamber. I don't want to drop the temperature too much because that could lead to a stall. But our bean temp is about 200, 201. So it's going a little bit fast, unfortunately, for this video, but they're looking really good. And I'm probably going to say let's just drop them. We're at 8 minutes 45 seconds, so let's click drop. And when we hit drop, it's going to turn on the exhaust fan automatically. I always start talking real loud, so sorry if it's too loud in here. And it's going to start to cool the heat. These fans are quite aggressive, and they do so quite quickly. But I still like to mix them around, because if you don't, what's going to happen is these beans in the front, even though they do get some ventilation the way that this basket's designed, you're still going to get a lot of that heat going into the beans. So make sure to agitate the beans. closer. And these beans, they do cool really quick in this cooling system. I feel like the M6 does a really good job with the way that it's designed to cool the beans. The extra large bean catcher is really nice. And the way that it's designed is it kind of has a gap at the bottom, so it's sucking air from all sides of the bean. So it's actually a pretty cool design, even though it doesn't look that complicated. Make sure you have some clean hands. You can kind of touch the beans. These turned out much nicer than the first one. So if this is your last roast for the day, you can turn your cooling fans off, and then what I'll do is make sure that the heat is off, and then turn your damper or your exhaust fan up to 100. And what can be helpful is make sure that this door is open, and you can even open up your green bean dump, and it'll help cool down your machine a lot quicker. Before we put it away, we want to make sure that our machine temp is about 50 degrees C. And that's just because it gets pretty hot. We don't want to damage any of the elements by moving it around while they're hot, or burn ourselves because the machine itself can be pretty hot. Another thing that you can do if you would like is pop up the sides, and it gets a little bit of additional ventilation in the machine. And it looks cool. There are some little flaps on the side, but they're pretty hot. I don't really recommend taking them off. Alright, so we just wrapped up that roast on this M6. You can see it's pretty easy. I've just been trying to make more and more content on using the Artisan software and just how to use the roaster itself. They're all a little bit different. I usually use the M2 just because I like the smaller capacity for learning and videos. It allows me to do more videos and more content, and I make a lot less coffee beans. So M6 is going to be pretty awesome if you're looking for that 1 or 2 and done type thing, because we did about pushing a pound of beans today. It's 500 grams, so it's not really a pound, it's like 3/4 of a pound, but quite a bit of beans. I did 2 roasts, and probably from start to finish less than 30 minutes. I wanted to let it heat and preheat, and then, well, I don't keep this out. I don't really have like a roasting cart or anything like that, so a little bit of cleanup. You get some chaff around from the fans. It actually makes quite a bit of mess, a little bit. It's not bad. Don't expect it to be like this crazy cleanup. I just have a little leaf blower over there that I use when I'm done, just to blow off the table and off the floor when I'm done. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, need to do just more M6, more M2, more M1. I should be getting this M10, and we'll play with that. I mean, that's a really big roaster. It's a kilo roaster, so it can do over 2 pounds of beans. But I mean, that's awesome. I roasted with I watched a guy roast with one of the bullets the other night, and then one of my friends has a Cormorant. And the Cormorant's very similar in capacity to the M6. The bullet, it's a kilo roaster, so it's probably closer to the M10. And those guys, they had some really interesting outlooks on just like the differences in the machines, what they like and they don't like about all. So did a little bit of a compare and contrast video of all the machines. It's just taking a little bit of time to clean up. So thanks for watching, and check back soon. Have a great one.